Alrighty. Cody Johnson's released his 6th studio album, Human, the double album, and it's time to talk about it. In case you're not already familiar with him, Cody Johnson is an artist from Texas who over the last decade or so has grown this very large and incredibly passionate fan base within the state of Texas before bringing that success to Nashville, where he broadened his horizons, exposing his sound to the mainstream world. And his entrance to the mainstream world was his 2019 album, Ain't Nothing to It. An album that, despite in my opinion being phenomenal, didn't perform on the national charts as well as people may have expected, the lead single On My Way to You charting the highest, peaking at number 13. But despite not being the most numerically successful artist at present, Cody has gained a lot of respect from numerous parties for staying true to himself and not selling out, as well as the sheer quality of his music. It might not be vanilla shopping mall pop radio wants, but anyone who actually listens to it typically falls in love with it. And there's a clip I love that really just sums up Cody's attitude from the Whiskey Riff podcast when he was talking about sort of the corruption within the radio world. It was him telling the story of how his team was going to pick the singles from the Human double album as they were announcing it, and they were just saying, if the radio's not going to play it anyways, let's just put out what we want. And I really think that summarizes Cody's attitude of just doing what he wants, and if you like it, you can hop along board. Now, I'll admit I was a little late to the Cody train. In fact, my introduction to him was his 2019 album, Ain't Nothing to It, a record I absolutely fell in love with, and it's mostly thanks to that record I ended up discovering the Texas country scene. Cody was my introduction to the Texas world. But yeah, moral of the story, I fell in love with Ain't Nothing to It before venturing deeper into his catalog and only falling in love with this guy more. Because he just doesn't make bad songs. It's freakish how consistently top drawer his music is. So it should go without saying, I was bubbling with excitement for this latest installment from Mr. Johnson. However, my anticipation quickly turned to skepticism when the rollout plan was announced. 2 songs every month until October, where he would release the full thing. I just wasn't really on board with it. You guys know this by now, but me personally, I'm just not down with the overly dragged out stuff. 7-month rollout of records where half the can of beans is spilled before the official release date. I prefer 1 or 2 singles and then an album 2 months later. So I was concerned the rollout would sap the excitement from me or stale the experience when we finally got the full LP, but that's just not the case. The fact of the matter is, no matter what happened during the build-up, I freaking love this record. Because although it's nothing Cody hasn't done before, it's just better than he's ever done it. Everything about this record is an improvement from his last work, and when your last piece of work is as good as Ain't Nothing to It, the thought of improvements is scary if you're his competition. The production quality, instrumental arrangements, studio mixes, everything about this album is just top notch. I mean, purely from a variety standpoint, this album is jam-packed with a phenomenal set of sounds and instruments, whether it be acoustic guitars, electric guitars, classical guitars, steel guitars, different drum kits, violins, fiddles, choirs, harmonicas, even a set of bagpipes comes in. But even though the palette is incredible, it's the way it's utilized and arranged that brings out the best possible outcomes. Take for example the intricate arrangement of Till You Can't, where you have the piano, drums, electrics, and acoustics all playing overlapping yet separate lines that come together like a piece of stained glass art. A sliver of this color here, that shape there, but when you take a step back, it reveals this breathtaking piece of art. Then of course the chorus just blasts in full force with the pounding drums and blaring electrics, while Cody delivers some of his most heartfelt lines via one of his best vocal performances to date, some of the best belting he's ever done. You could also look at the track When It Comes to You, which is a textbook example of how the proper use of strings can take a simplistic tune and turn it into a dramatic, cinematic showcase. I just love the orchestral sounds in any style of music. They have a way of adding this profound strength to any song you can't get from any other instrument. This song is also, in my opinion, one of the moments where I'm left utterly impressed at how far Cody's able to push his sound. Every time it leaves me wondering how much more can he possibly get from this Texas style, because he's not overstepping boundaries or blatantly incorporating other genres, but he just keeps egging on and expanding his boundaries within the country world, and it's a pleasure to hear. And on the topic of bringing in external elements, I think this is a great time to highlight how successfully he was able to phase R&B into this record. I think the R&B moments on Human go down much smoother than Ain't Nothing to It, where they can feel maybe a little choppy, whereas on Human, I think Cody took the smoother, generally better fit elements from R&B and put those to use here. There's just a difference between when Cody uses R&B as opposed to some radio darling, because when Cody does an R&B song, he takes the rhythms, the chord progressions, the theoretical aspects, and applies them to an already country palette, and the result is a smooth, gorgeous blend of the two worlds. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, when someone like Dan and Shay does it, they typically take the instruments of today's R&B world, apply that to a vanilla pop structure with bad country lyrics, and you can begin to see how many levels above Cody's genre bending is as opposed to the other mainstream acts. Another highlight of the record for me was Cody's addition of third parties and features. They all felt very intentional, smart, and incredibly effective. Like the awesome set of features on Cowboy scale of 1 to 10, which has Dale Brisby, Ned Ledoux, Red Steagall, and my favorite for obvious bias reasons, the Canadian legend Corb Lund, who just adds an extra sprinkle of charm to the track that few can. Right behind Corb though, I thought Red Steagall's little patriotic blurb at the end was super wholesome and a great addition to the track as well. Overall, it's just a super fun track with a bunch of fun people, and Cody couldn't have chosen a better crew to sing it with. Another feature we all know as well by now was Willie Nelson's appearance on the redux of his song Sad Songs and Waltzes, a song that takes the bluesiness of the emotions and translates it perfectly through the classical guitars, drowning steel solos, and Willie's actual performance is surprisingly sharp for a novelty appearance. However, one addition I don't want anyone to be sleeping on is the choir added in on the back half of By Your Grace. Man, ever since 24, I've just fallen in love with choirs. Similar to orchestras, the abundance of vocals have a way of taking the wheel of a song and just overpowering it with this angelic vibe. I freaking love it, and it also obviously just fits perfect with the gospel idea of the song. There's also a lot of solos provided by Cody's band that I think are just awesome, perfectly timed and placed. They're all punchy, catchy, effective, but never drag. They arrive, do their thing, and then pack their bags and go. The solos really just help add some personality to tracks that otherwise could potentially be lacking, because at 18 tracks and 62 minutes, you would think the record would drag, or at least some of the tracks would be expendable, but truthfully, that's just not the case. The only reason I could see someone justifying the cut of a track is if the subject matter had already been previously covered. For me, a track I was thinking was expendable was Let's Build a Fire, but right as I'm placing it on the chopping block, these wicked solos come out of nowhere and make sure to emphatically tell me that this song deserves to go nowhere but on the final track list. In my opinion, every song on here is bold, unique, but most importantly, is able to hold its own amongst the already incredibly loaded track list. However, before I begin to wind down this review, I want to touch on the writing, because Cody doesn't write many of his songs, but he proved again that he really has an ear for what fits. He always seems to get the perfect songs that fit where he's at in life. Especially in this season as he grows into the role of a father nicely. Fittingly, there's been a growing sense of maturity and ownership in his lyrics on this record. Cody is no longer the fired up, politically aggressive outlaw he once was, but rather he's become this wise, adaptable, protective father with a lot to say. There's also just like an abundance of topics he covers in really effective ways, whether it be existential moments like Till You Can't, or the more protective fathering moments like God Bless the Boy, which remains a Song of the Year contender for me. It's like his Thomas Rhett to the Guys That Date My Girls moment. You've also got sweet love songs to his wife like Known for Loving You, Made a Home, and my favorite of that bunch, Stronger. There's sweeter moments like Driveway and what would appear to be the fan favorite so far, Treasure. But the writing also maintains this standard on the more fun tracks like Let's Build a Fire, Longer Than She Did, Son of a Ramblin' Man, Cowboy Scale, and many others. And then of course to close off the album, like I said, you have that predictably spiritual moment, but again, what's not to love about it? Overall, I just think this is a near perfect collection of tracks. Just when you thought Cody couldn't further refine and improve his well-established style, he does, with catchier hooks, stronger, more technical vocal performances, smarter incorporations of rock and R&B, harder hitting boot-stopping bangers, more impactful sentimental moments, all blanketed under a pristine and fruitful level of mixing. I guess my question is, what else could you possibly ask for from a record? Now, if you look at it from a distance, in terms of career arc, Cody isn't really taking any big risks. He's not reinventing himself, but what he is doing is putting out progressively improved and refined music, and when the music is this gosh darn good, again, what's not to love? The music is the focus, and it speaks for itself as well as Cody, just further establishing him as a cut above the rest. I mean, with every track, let alone album this guy puts out, his case to be my favorite artist just grows stronger and stronger and stronger. Yeah, in case you couldn't tell, I'm feeling very good about this record. Rating wise, I think I'm going to give it a good 9. I think like a 9.3. And that is all I've got for you guys today. Be sure to comment below what you guys thought of this album. I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Links to my Instagram, Discord, and podcast are all in the description below. Be sure to check all those out. And yeah, until next time, I hope you have a fantastic day.